A used boat will lose 20% of its value within the first year of purchase. That's a huge hit, but luckily for you, the used boat market is in your favor. In this video, I'm going to guide you through the process of buying a used boat. I'm going to cover where you can find these great deals like Marketplace, OfferUp, Boat Trader, and a couple other ways that are productive. I'm also going to show you how to inspect the boat that you're looking at so you can avoid costly mistakes or even avoid getting scammed. And I'm going to show you how to use the inspection to negotiate the price and finalize your purchase. Now, everybody has different needs for their boat. My boat is a 24-foot Grady White with plenty of cockpit space for fishing and diving, which is what I like to do. And it has a nice cabin for camping, which is great for my needs. There are different types of boats. This is my Zebra Skiff, which is a flats boat. These flats boats are great for rivers, lakes, and fishing in the flats. There's other types of boats that are about this size that can operate in the same type of waters. You may not be interested in fishing or anything like that, and you're looking for something like this, like a cabin cruiser. Now, the first tip that I am going to give you is no matter what boat it is that you choose, make sure that the brand you're looking at, you do your due diligence on researching that brand. You go on the forum, you go on the Facebook groups of those boat brands and see what people like, what they hate, and what to look out for certain years, certain models. That's the best advice that I can give you for researching that particular brand. There are great brands out there. There's very popular brands, and there's brands that are not so great and where their quality is not as good. It's not what this video is about. There's just so much we can cover. That can be a whole other video. So where can you actually find these boats? Well, we're going to start off with Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, which are the online sites, along with Boat Trader. We're going to put Marketplace and OfferUp in the same category because they roughly do the same thing. They're just different interfaces. You're going to go on the site, you're going to put in your zip code, and you can put a radius of where it is that you're located and where you want to search. You put in your address or your zip code, and you type in the style boat that you want, or you type in boat, center consoles, walk around, bass boat. You put that into the search engine, you hit enter, you're going to get a list of boats. Now, there are filters that you can filter your search in order to refine it. Put cost. I like to put my budget in that filter element, and that's what I'm going to use to search. Oftentimes, when you're looking through Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp, you're going to find deals that are too good to be true. If it's too good to be true, it more than likely is too good to be true. Things like a free boat is the most expensive boat you're ever going to buy. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's free in the long run. One of the common things that scammers do on these types of platforms is they're going to ask you for a deposit for you to go see the boat. If you see something like that where they're asking you for money before you even go, do not give them money and move on to the next boat. A lot of the times also, these marketplace sellers have a history, and you can see how many stars they're rated, and you can see what they sold before. If you see that they're flipping boats, if you see that they restore boats, you can look at that in their profile and get a better idea of what type of seller you're dealing with, or if they've even scammed somebody else, or the relationships that they've had with other buyers that they've dealt with. Boat Trader is another great site for you to use. It used to be the only site that people used to sell their boats, and now it's really more for dealers and private dealers that are trying to sell boats, but you can also find some used deals on there as well. It's a very similar layout to Auto Trader, but this is for boats. The interface is a little bit different from your Marketplace and your OfferUp. What I have found is that Boat Trader is for boats that are a little bit more expensive and not your cheaper boats. Another way that you can purchase boats is through auctions. So there are auctions like Tampa Bay Machinery Auctions. Sometimes you'll find decommissioned boats from the sheriff's office or from the police department or Coast Guard and things like that on sites like this. The only thing with that is it's usually as is, and you can't really do your inspection until after purchase. So you don't know if things are rotted. You're almost taking a gamble, but sometimes you get some really good deals. If you have some money to burn, this might be the option for you. They do this auction at this particular place one time a month. So if that's something that might interest you, you might want to check your municipality and see if they do any type of auctions like that as well. I'm going to put the link up here to one of my videos where I went to the Florida Keys and I went looking at boats that were on the side of the road. There was a couple that were some very good deals, and they have a range of things, a range of boats that you can find. Side of the road deals are a great way to find some boat deals. Another tip is you can even go to your local marina and you can ask around, talk to the dockmaster. There's always one or two boats being sold at the boatyard. Now, before we get into the inspection part of the video, there's a couple tips that I'd like to give you. you're gonna have to look at dozens of boats to get a better idea of what they cost. You can't just go with the first one you see and think that that's a great price or too high or too low. You're gonna have to look at dozens of boats before knowing the actual market. With that said, you never buy the first boat that you see. It's just like buying a house. You never buy the first house you see. You need to see multiple boats to get a better idea if they're a good deal or not. Now, you found the boat that you like, you've messaged the person. Before you even go see this boat, I have a number one rule that applies to 99% of the time. And I learned this from a buddy of mine who buys used boats on the regular. And that tip is never buy a boat that does not have a title. If the person does not have a title, stay clear from that purchase. Do not give them your money. They're never gonna get the title for that boat unless it's a miracle. If the person does not have the title for the boat, you can always offer to give them the money to retrieve that title from the state that they're located in. Buying a boat without a title can be a huge problem, and you can get in a lot of trouble for having a boat that's not yours. It's chaotic. When I purchased my Seacraft Scepter, it was the perfect boat for my needs and for the project that I wanted to do. The only thing that was missing was the actual title. This boat was from Alabama originally, and the gentleman is living here in Miami, and he did not have the title. So he had to go through Alabama's titling system to get the title. And I told him that I would purchase the boat only if I had a title. Sure enough, he was able to get it, thankfully, and that's the best way to do it. Do not buy a boat and then do all the things you want to it, spend all that money without having a title. So you've done your due diligence, you've researched the boat that you'd like, you've seen dozens of them online, the boat falls within your budget, the person has a title, and everything seems right. Now you have to go inspect the boat of your dreams. Luckily, I have 4 boats here that we can inspect together and give you a better idea of what to look for when doing these inspections. If you have the money to hire a marine surveyor, then great for you. Most people don't have that $1,000, $1,500 to actually pay somebody to come out and survey a boat, especially when you're looking at multiple boats. If you're dead set on a boat, but you still don't know if the boat is 100% okay, then go ahead and get yourself a marine surveyor, but they are expensive. When you arrive at the boat, try not to get distracted by how nice the boat looks, the color, the shiny stainless steel. We gotta go there with an objective mindset and think logically about these things. I've made a checklist for you guys that you can find on my website. The link is in the description below. So if you guys are purchasing a used boat, you can go through this whole checklist and check off all the inspection points, making your inspection a lot easier and smoother. You'll be able to ask the right questions and you'll be able to check the right things. Before we even start on the actual boat, we're gonna have to look at the trailer. You're gonna have to see if this boat even comes with a trailer, or if it's just the boat alone, or if the boat is even kept in the water. So there's a couple different options with that. Do you need a trailer for this boat? Is that something additional you're gonna have to purchase? Is the boat gonna be stored in the water? Where is this boat located at? Is it in the water? Or is it on the trailer? Is it on a marina dock? Is it on a marina dry dock? Those are questions you're gonna have to ask. Does this boat need a trailer? This particular boat is on a trailer, so we're gonna start at the inspection of the actual trailer. So there's different types of trailer. This is an aluminum trailer, dual axle, because there's 2 axles on here, and it is a bunk trailer, as you can see there, with standard axles. This is a galvanized trailer and a roller trailer, because it's got these rollers. This is also a dual axle, but this has an old hub system. It's an antiquated system that is going to need replacing eventually, so those are things to consider in your negotiating price. Here is my single axle trailer, and this axle is actually a torsion axle. So this is a little different, a little bit more modern than the standard spring style straight axle. When you're looking at your trailer, you want to make sure that there is no cracks or any repairs that are done to the actual trailer. You want to see if there's any rust or anything like that on the trailer. You want to look at the bunks, and you want to look at these brackets here. This is a very important point. If these things are rusted out, this can break and this can drop your boat on the actual frame of the trailer, and you can have a huge problem going down the road. You want to inspect the wheels of the trailer. And as you can see on this one's worn out a little bit. So that's some information you're going to relay to the seller. You're going to also want to check and make sure that the hubs have their caps, that they've been greased up. Okay, and you want to take a look back here. Look at the springs, see what condition they are. These are all galvanized, so they are going to rust. Take a look at the axle there. What's it look like? And is it completely rusted out? This one's not too bad. You're also going to want to check the lights, make sure that the lights are working properly when they're hooked up. And another big thing, in Florida, you need a registration for your trailer, your boat trailer. You're going to need that registration from the buyer. A lot of listings on Marketplace and OfferUp will tell you they're selling the boat, but the trailer doesn't have a title or registration. That's a huge problem as well. You're taking a gamble if you're purchasing a boat with a trailer that doesn't have a title or registration. You want to take a look at the trailer jack, make sure that that's functioning properly, and the winch. You want to make sure that the winch works properly and that it locks in place and does all the things that the winch is supposed to do. Now let's get to the important part, which is inspecting the actual boat. When coming up to the boat, you want to see if this boat has been maintained, if it's been taken care of, if it's really dirty. Has this boat been neglected for a long time? So let's start off at the bottom of the hull. Okay, and what I like to do is I like to look and make sure that there's no hits or patches, any type of fiberglass work that's been done to the bottom of the hull. You want to inspect the chines and make sure that there's nothing obvious, no dents, no indentations or anything like that, where you might see some repair work has been done at some point. When you see little scratches like this, that's pretty typical. This is from, beaching up the boat on the sand or even running aground on sand and things like that. You want to make sure that you're looking at every single part of this boat. Take a little camera, take your phone out, bring a flashlight. Those are all tools that you should use when you're inspecting boats for purchase. As you can see, everything down here looks good. There's no obvious signs of damage or anything like that. There's small little scrapes and things. As you come along on the side of the boat, you want to take a look at the condition of the paint or the gel coat. Is that something that you're going to have to repaint, or if you're going to have to re-gel coat, or if you have to buff and polish and actually detail the boat? These are all things that you can use in your negotiating when you are purchasing a boat. Another important part, take a look at the hull, see if it's straight or not, see if there's any obvious signs of repairs or anything that's been done to it. A big thing in boats, especially older ones, are the through holes. You want to inspect the through holes and make sure they're not brittle. These are recently changed and they're brand new. But these plastic ones you have to be very wary of because they do break over time and you will sink your boat, especially the ones that are real close or below the water line like this one here. As you're coming up higher where the rub rail meets the top cap, the rub rail is supposed to protect the boat from exactly that, rubbing, right? So when you pull up to a dock, now what you'll find is right along these areas, you'll find things like this, spider cracks. That usually is an indicator of some type of hit in this area. And this is a common place where a boat will touch the dock or pilings. And if it's a hard enough hit, you'll get cracking and actually have issues with fiberglass behind this. And I'll give you an example right now. If you look at this area here, the previous owner siliconed this area because he hit something very, very hard here in this area, and you have all of this spider cracking going on here. These are all things that you should take into account, inspect even more thoroughly on the inside of the boat. So on this, for example, I would go on the inside of the boat and go underneath the gunnel and take a look at what's going on back here. We've already checked the bottom of the boat. We've checked the whole sides. Now we're gonna check a very important part. This for me is a deal breaker if I'm purchasing a used boat that is not to restore, a boat that I'm going to be using right off the bat. The transom is probably the strongest part of the actual boat because the transom is what holds up the motor, and there's tons of force being placed upon this transom as you're traveling through the water. So this is probably the strongest area on a boat. There are many boats that have different coring materials inside this transom. There is marine grade plywood. There are things like K-cell or Kusa board, which is a composite material. This transom is actually poured, so it's a ceramic poured transom that is impervious to rot. When you're buying used boats, especially older ones, the coring material in here is usually marine grade plywood. And you want to make sure that there's no rot and there's no water intrusion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to check for rot or a bad transom. Now, I'm not saying that you show up with a hammer to test another person's boat, but when you are checking for a bad transom, you want to hear a solid ping on the transom. And you want to do that all throughout the transom. You're going to hear a solid ping. Now I'm going to show you what a bad transom sounds like. It's a thud. This transom is rotted. Completely rotted. So it sounds like a thud. This doesn't always mean that because it makes a nice high pinging sound that it's good, because this is my 16-foot zebra skiff, and this transom, although it sounds good, it's not good. There was water intrusion in this transom, and the transom was wet. So it hadn't yet rotted, but it did have water intrusion and eventually will rot. So how do you check for that? Well, you can buy a moisture meter to check, or you could even drill holes into the transom, but a buyer's not going to allow you to do that. Another telltale sign of a bad transom is if you come into where the motor mount holes are, you'll see an indentation where this digs in, because the water will seep in through the hole. Water will intrude in the coring material and it'll start rotting away. The fiberglass bends in with the pressure, and that's another sign of rot or a transom that is going bad. You can also check for a bad transom on the inside of the boat through the bilge, and I'll show you that in a second. You will oftentimes get water intrusion around these through holes. Any type of accessories that have been mounted to the transom, like these underwater lights, or sometimes you'll see a transducer hung out over here somewhere, and water will get in through those screw holes. They do not seal the screws properly. Same here with the motor mount holes. Water will get in there and you have a huge problem. Even things like these tow hooks are a good telltale when you see these things caving in, usually from the inside. You'll see these bolts digging into that fiberglass when you have a rotted transom. One thing that I will say about the transom is it is going to cost you anywhere between $4,000 to $8,000 with parts and labor. If a transom needs to be done on a boat, you find that it's rotted or it needs to be replaced, there's some negotiating power in that. If you really like the boat and you want to get it done by professionals or even yourself, you might be able to knock out, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 off the price if the transom is bad. Same thing goes for the stringers. If they need to be replaced, that's a huge job. I highly recommend against doing it yourself, but if you have the money, hey, those are things that you can negotiate with the seller. Now we're getting into probably the most important part of the boat, the heart of the boat, which is the actual motor. Now, I personally would not buy a bigger V6 outboard that is not a more modern 4-stroke. I'm not going to get into a discussion of 2-stroke versus 4-stroke, or which outboard is better and which outboard is worse. What I recommend you to do is, if you have the money, number one, hire yourself a marine mechanic who's going to come out and check the motor for you. They're going to come in and check the compression. They're going to come in and they're going to check the lower unit. They're going to check the trim system. But if you can't afford a marine mechanic to come out with you to check your motor, then you're going to want to buy one of these tools. This is a compression tool. You can find some information of how to do that online. You want to make sure that you have the correct compression, that each cylinder is within 10% of the other cylinders. You want to look for any types of leaks, especially around the trim system. You want to make sure that the grease points have been greased. You want to look down at the lower unit. You want to open up the lower unit access point so you can see if there's any water in the gear system. Now, for example, I have here twin Mercury 225 EFI older outboards. These are actually very good outboards. They're a little bit antiquated and outdated, but they run like scalded dogs. If you're coming up here and inspecting this particular boat, you can see where there's a leak, an oil leak, and that oil leak where this motor has had the oil mixing system leaking for some time. As you can see, it's dripped down here. It's not the actual trim system. The next thing that you're going to want to check is the steering system. This is a hydraulic steering system. There's mechanical and there's hydraulic for these outboard style boats. And you want to see if there's any leaking of that fluid out here on this bracket or in the transom of your boat. And you can see that there's been a little bit of leaking here. It's not too bad, but there's a little bit of dirt here on this ram. You want to make sure, move the steering side to side and make sure that this moves freely and it's not clunky or there's no air in the system. And if it's a mechanical system, you want to make sure that the system is not locked and moves freely. Ask the person that you're buying this boat from if they have records of any work done to the motor. So any type of maintenance records or any printouts that you can pull, a mechanic would have to do that for you. But if they have any records, usually they'll show you the hours and the time spent at certain RPMs, which is really important. You don't want a boat that's been wide open throttle for the majority of its time. And you don't want a boat that's been sitting at idle for the majority of its time either. Now, how many hours is too much for a motor? Well, that really depends. These motors like to be ran. So on average, a recreational user will use their boat about 100 hours a year for reference. Now, you also want to make sure that you're starting up this motor on the earmuffs, on the hose, making sure that it cranks up fine and running fine. But you also want to check on the water, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. All right, now we're on the actual boat, and we're going to start back here at the stern. Like I said previously, you want to make sure that this steering ram and all the hoses are good. There's no bulging on this hydraulic hose. And your mechanical system is going to look a little different than this. And you want to make sure that these hoses, and this particular hose is actually covered, but some boats have this exposed. Okay, you want to make sure that all those cables are good, not frayed or exposed or corroded. Okay, this is an important area because we can check for many things back here. Okay, we're going to check for the transom integrity. We're going to check for stringer integrity or the knees of the transom. I'm going to show you a couple little tricks to spot a rotted stringer system. Or we get to look at the electrical work. We also get to see the bilge pump and the washdowns and things like that. Okay, so coming down into the bilge, bring yourself a flashlight, bring yourself a camera, whatever it is that you're going to need to help you take a look. Okay, this bilge is pretty dirty. We're going to just go over the basics here. So here you have a stringer. There's another stringer over there. There you have another stringer, and then another stringer on the starboard side. Take a look at anything that might be drilled into the transom where water might have come through. These are the stringers. Okay, and just like we checked on the transom, knock on the stringers and see if they are hollow or not. Okay, the other thing is towards the back of the stringer, back in here, this has a cutout for water to flow through. Oftentimes manufacturers, especially older boats, they won't cover this with fiberglass, and water will get in here and it'll seep up and rot this knee. If you stick your finger in there and you get that dust, that powdered dust from the wood, then you already know that that stringer is rotted. Now, some boats have composite stringers, some boats have wooden stringers. This Seacraft has foam-filled stringers like this. So there's no rot in there. That also means, though, that water could have got in there somehow and soaked those stringers. So a moisture meter will be handy. So those are things you're going to have to do in your research of the boat you're looking to purchase. Now that you're down here, it's a good time. Check the electrical, check the fuel lines. You could check the fuel filter. The fuel filter is super important. See if there's water in the fuel. And then here's a good time to check the bilge pump to see if it's wired correctly. Here's the float switch. You can hear it turns on. That's because it's wired to the battery. So that's the bilge. Now back here we have two compartments. Usually this is where the batteries are stored. So let's take a look at those. Coming back here to the first compartment, and this is the house battery location. So we have a cable here, and this is for my shore power. So I have this rigged up, my shore power, and I have it tucked away back here. But this is my house battery, and you're gonna want to make sure that there's no corrosion on these terminals, and everything is nice and neat. You have heat shrink on your connections. Everything's nice and tidy with tie wraps or zip ties. And this is also a good time to check your through holes. Like I said, check the through holes from the outside. You want to make sure that everything's nice and covered here, and everything's nice and tight, and nothing is brittle. If they're brittle, you want to change them out. We said the transom, we can check from the inside as well. See if there's any screw holes in here. I redid the transom on this boat over a year ago, so I know that it's good. But you want to inspect for any holes or anything like that. You could see where that liquid was coming out of there. Let's check out the other side. Alrighty, this is where we have the actual battery switch, and we have the breaker, and we have a couple other bus bars here. We also have down there the tubes that go for the tubes that are the hydraulic steering. That's an area of inspection. You want to make sure there's no hydraulic fluid leaking from there. What's this look like? What's the switch look like? Is it new? Is it old? How are the connections over here? Do they have heat shrink? Is there corrosion on there? Those are all things to consider and look at. Now we look at the battery. This is the starter battery. You want to look at all the connections on there as well. There's no corrosion on there. Everything is heat shrunk and nice and neat. It is a tight space. Over here we have a couple wires. If you see some wires just hanging out, ask the person that's selling the boat, hey, what are these for? This is for my Whiff Pro system, and I have these here temporarily. And then I have my bilge hose here. I have some extra wires back here for the wire harness as well. This particular boat has 2 live wells. You want to open up all those little compartments. I'm not too worried about things like that. I want to look at the important things. Now we're going to come up here to the deck. A deck is a very important structural part of the boat as well. We're going to talk about what to look for on a deck, specifically the soft spots on a deck. A lot of boats will have these compartments like you see here that are access plates to either a fuel tank or a storage or anything like that. This particular boat has the fuel tank up in the front, and it has this area that I created for storage. These hatches, many times in older boats, they rot if they've been cored with plywood. So what you do is you're going to walk on here and you're going to see if it's soft, and put your weight on there and make sure that there's no give. Okay, and you want to do that all throughout these hatches, and not just these hatches, but also throughout the whole floor. You want to walk into the corners especially. I'm going to go on the Seacraft. I'm going to show you what a bad floor looks like. This floor is actually perfect. Now we're on the 1975 Seacraft. You can see this compartment in the center and this compartment back here. And if you see here, you can see how soft. So this coring material here needs to be replaced. And you're going to do the same thing here. Remember those screw holes I was telling you about? You can see as you put your weight there how that goes in. What happens is these screws that are drilled into the floor that hold up seats, these hatches, things like that, over time the sealant, if they even put sealant around the screws, will allow water intrusion, and that will go expanding the rot throughout the deck. Just like we check the deck, we're going to do our 2-step check all along the walk around, and we can inspect things like the windows and make sure there's no leaks or anything like that. You want to walk around the walk around here. I have my anchor set out here because I'm looking to repaint this area and redo it. Check the anchor storage. What's this look like? Inspect that area as well. Make sure those anchor lights are working right. And rotted deck is going to cost you, just like a transom, it's going to be a lot of money to rip out. So that's, again, negotiating power that you can use in your purchase if you want to take on that type of project. A hatch, that's kind of easy. I have a video I'm going to put up here because I did it on this boat. It's something that you can do in a weekend, but it's negotiating power for you. Now, these compartments, we want to open them up. Okay, what do we got in here? Well, here we have a freshwater tank. You want to make sure that those connections are good. If there's any leaks or anything like that. All right. You want to check out the fuel lines because that comes from the fuel tank. Here you have the pump. There's silicone all along those screws that are on that bulkhead. And inspect for any type of repairs or anything like that that might have gone on the boat. Now this also might be a deal breaker for a boat, which is a bad fuel tank. Okay. Here I have the fuel tank for the boat under this compartment. All boats have to have some type of access to the actual fuel tank by either a compartment like this or a whole hatch that comes off. Luckily, I'm able to pull this off if I need to do any type of repairs. But you want to open up these hatches and inspect the fuel tank. Here you have your grounding wire. Look at those connections, okay? That's the grounding wire, and those are your connections for your gauges. Here's your fuel sender, okay? How's that looking? Is it corroded? A big thing you want to check is for any fuel smell coming out of this fuel tank. You stick your nose in there. If you get a really strong smell of fuel, then you might have a fuel leak. That means that your tank might be compromised, okay? Sometimes if you see water sitting on top of these fuel tanks, water's getting in here somehow, and that is a problem. Because if water gets in there and sits on these tanks, it'll start corroding at the tank. Many boats have their fuel tanks encased in foam. Now, the older style foam will soak in water, and that foam will sit up against the tank with that water, and it'll create pitting into a fuel tank. You don't want that. You can't be 100% sure that your tank is good or not, but checking it this way will definitely give you more confidence. Another big pointer is to come back into the bilge and stick your nose in the bilge area and see if you have a strong smell of fuel. Remember, boats are usually sitting up this way, and that fuel will run down to the bilge and you'll get that smell of fuel. So that's something to check for. It could be the lines, it could be a fuel filter, but it also could be your tank. So that's a very important part to check. Fuel tank is gonna cost you for this boat about $1,500 to install. It's gonna be another, $500. So you're looking about $2,000 and change for a new fuel tank. You can use that as negotiating power as well if you see any issues with the fuel tank. Go through all the compartments of the boat, check those out, see what they have in there. All the inflatables, the flares, the fire extinguishers, make sure those are all good. Okay, those are just little extra things. Same thing with up here. Coming up to the helm, so I got the battery switch going. You want to make sure the running lights work. Running lights, your anchor light, your deck lights, these turn on. Got the spreader lights going, both turned on. You have your voltimeter there, the bilge, your live well. You have underwater lights here as well. Go through all those switches, make sure that they all work. Another thing up here at the helm you want to check is the hydraulic helm system. This is where you would add the hydraulic fluid. You want to make sure that there's no leaks. You would check up in here for any leaks, or even under here it would drip, and onto the deck. This one has no leaks, but you want to come up in here and check to see if there's any leaks on this part, on the inside part underneath. Get in there, get dirty, and pry and poke. Mechanical system is not like that. It's going to have a cable that runs through here, so you're going to need more space. So this would be actually inside with a cable running through it. You want to make sure that's nice and greased up. Okay, you have the controls. You want to make sure that the trim system works. See, the trim system works. All right, and you have your gauges. Okay, you can check through all the compartments in there. Now we're going to go ahead and check on the wiring of this boat. I have some exposed wiring over here. This usually has a cover that goes on this area. But there's some wiring that you can see here. Inspect the wiring, make sure that everything, it's all tied together. This particular wiring is held together with all the zip ties. There's a bus bar back here. You have all of the grounds back here that have their heat shrink connectors, and there's no corrosion going on in there. So that's a good sign. So the electrical system for this boat is in the cabin. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the electrical system. That's a big part of a boat's system. On my boat, I have quite a lot going on. So I have a 1,000 watt inverter with a solar charge controller for my solar panel that I have on the roof that I put on and take off. You have your fuse block. You have all your wires coming in. Now I did this about 1.5 years ago when I had an idea of what I was doing, but I'm not as organized as I am now. If I was to do this again, it would look different, but everything here is put together and labeled here on the fuse block, and all the connections have their heat shrink connectors, as you can see here. Okay, so you want to make sure that it doesn't look like this. This is what bad wiring looks like. It looks like an absolute rat's nest where things are just put together and a mess. You have some fuse systems over here. There's no heat shrink connections anywhere in sight. All these wires need to be changed. So all of that needs to be replaced. That's no good. If you see something that you don't like, hey, why are these wires just hanging out? Well, I know that this is for the horn, okay? And I disconnected the horn because I have to replace it. So that's why this is hanging out. Ask the seller what's going on with this if you see something that you don't know. Hey, what's this box over here? What's this for? This is for my water and fuel system. I can explain to you what it's for. Yeah, look through the cabin, see if there's any water intrusion coming in, okay? This is a great time to look at the anchor storage as well. See what's going on back there. Is it moldy or not? This cabin is extremely moldy because I haven't been in here for about 3 months. So I live in South Florida, so it gets really moldy in here. So I got to come in here and do a cleaning. Those are things you might be able to negotiate with. An electrical system on a boat, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. It cost me about $1,500 to do this whole system myself from scratch, from zero. So again, that's negotiating power. All right, this is where the hull meets the water. The sea trial is one of the most critical steps in buying a used boat. It's your chance to see how the boat actually performs, handles, and reveals any hidden issues that you just can't catch on dry land. So here's exactly what you need to look out for. As soon as you put the boat in the water, the first thing you should be checking is that bilge area, see if there's any water creeping in, and I would stay there for at least a few minutes just to make sure that there's no water filling in the hole or anything like that. First things first, the engine. Start it up and pay attention. Does it fire right up or does it struggle? A slow start could mean a weak battery, some fuel issues, or even some engine trouble. So listen for any unusual noises like knocking, ticking, or any type of sputtering. While underway, push the throttle and check the boat gets up to speed smoothly and reaches the recommended RPMs for that engine model. If it's underperforming or feels sluggish, it could mean a couple things. The engine might be old, there could be some fuel delivery issues, or some type of problems with the prop. Next, you need to feel the boat. Is there any excessive vibration at the wheel, on the deck, or the throttle controls? This could be a sign of some type of bent propeller or some type of engine mount that needs replacing. Also, you're going to test the steering, turn the wheel fully in both directions, make sure it's smooth and there's no sticking, grinding, or looseness or skipping in the steering. Hydraulic or cable steering issues can be expensive to fix. Now let's talk about planing. When you throttle up, the boat should climb onto plane very quickly and evenly. If the bow stays up for too long or struggles to level out, it could mean that the engine is underpowered, or the weight distribution of the boat is off, or the trim tabs aren't working properly. Speaking of trim, as you're running the boat, look back as you trim the motor up. Make sure that it's trimming while it's underway. If not, there could be a problem with the trim motor or some type of problem with the hydraulics. Once you've cruised for a bit, check for any leaks, open up the bilge compartment once again, look for any water that shouldn't be there. A little water might be normal, but excessive water could mean some leaks through some through-hole fittings or even a cracked hole. Now, once that you're actually on the water, you can test the electronics and the accessories that we checked on land. So you might want to check the GPS, the lights, and all the pumps, like your bilge pump, like your washdown pumps. Those are all things you want to check while you're out on the water. The sea trowel gives you a chance to test the boat in real conditions and uncover any problems before you buy. Don't rush this step. Take your time, make notes, and if anything doesn't feel right, it's worth investigating further. Remember, if the seller won't allow a sea trowel, that's a giant red flag and you might want to walk away. Now, a huge important aspect of purchasing a boat is if you're going to be financing or if you're going to be purchasing cash. Cash is king. People like cash. You might even be able to get a better deal when purchasing with cash. You did your inspection, everything looks good. You did your checklist, everything checks out good. The compression, the motor, the transom, everything is just the way you want it. You have the cash to buy this boat, you got it at the price you want it. When you do the title change, I suggest that you go to a titling office, you go to the DMV, and you do it there in person. It's just an easier, smooth transition instead of just taking the actual title, signing it over. You just don't want any problems, and you can do the transaction in person, get everything notarized, and it's good to go, and you don't have to worry. Take that extra step, it's worth it. I know I might have missed a few things. Write down in the comments of any other suggestions that you might have. That way we can all learn in the comments, and other people that are looking to purchase used boats can use this video and the comment section as a form of information to have more confidence when purchasing a boat. That way we can all help each other and we can all learn. Don't forget to check out the checklist that I'm gonna have in the description. So with a little research, a little patience, and a keen eye, you can find the perfect used boat that fits your needs and your budget. And remember, a key to a successful boat purchase is a thorough inspection, smart negotiating, and a little bit of luck. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Comment down below your thoughts, and I'll see you on the next one.